Hello everyone, my name is Fabio Spano. I'm an English teacher and I currently teach in a junior high school in Japan. I teach English in a junior high school in Japan, and I recently started teaching with games. In October of last year, I started my first Ludic language pedagogy experience. Today, I will not talk about that experience, but I will talk about something that for now is just theoretical and I'm working on. Which is a parallelism between game masters and expert teachers. Game master, for who doesn't know it, is a figure of tabletop RPGs, role-playing games. Is one of the players that take in charge of the game and design experiences, engaging. His work, his job is to design engaging and fun experiences for the other player to live, and the other player will live this experience with their character. They could be mage, health mage, warrior, dwarfs. Depends on the game. And the name of this little intervention, is Skill Game Masters, Expert Teachers, and Task Planning. Because what I believe is the most similar feature of Game Master and Expert Teacher, the thing that they share, is the attention they put on their players and on their students, respectively, in task planning. Let's move on. I will try to walk towards this parallelism by making three main points. First, games are tasks. Game designer creates them and tasks. Second, in tabletop RPGs, the designers are the GMs. So, usually game designers have to play challenging, engaging tasks for a huge range of audience. While in tabletop RPGs, the GMs have to create the challenges just for their players, like we have to create our tasks just for our students. And the last point that we'll try to make is that in tabletop RPGs manuals, and here I have the picture of the two most famous, which are Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinders. In those manuals, there are suggestions for GMs on how to design engaging and challenging challenges. Sorry about that. And those suggestions, to me, they could be used even for teachers when planning task-based Ludic language pedagogies. Let's go to the first point more in detail. Games are tasks, and game designer create them as tasks. Well, the games are tasks. I'm pretty sure Dr. York already mentioned it in the previous intervention of this workshop. But to go more in detail, I will talk about what Sykes says are the main TBLT points on second language acquisition. She says that the first point is that a TBLT, the task-based language teaching, should be goal-oriented and learning by doing. Just like games that you have to play by hitting a goal. Maybe you have to collect items, or you have to kill mobs, or you have to save the princess in the end. Just to use a little cliche here, Super Mario cliche. Second point is scaffolded learning, tasks and subtasks. The games are the same, because before you had manuals. I remember when I first started playing games, I had manuals, but now we have tutorials, and in the tutorials you practice a skill that later you have to use with another skill in order to face the challenge. The third point by Sykes is collaborative use of language, negotiation for learning, and learning autonomy. This is true for multiplayer, when communication and coordination is what you need to beat the challenge, and that's the fun. The communication with other players with your similar skill in order to beat a challenge that you cannot possibly face by yourself. Provision of feedback and scaffolded feedback. In games, failing or beating the challenge is the feedback. If you fail, then it means that you have to do something a little bit better in order to be able to beat the challenge. You fail again, until eventually you master the skill, the ability you need to beat the challenge, and you beat the challenge. Authentication by learners, not task creators and or instructor. Games are the same. You just have the players and the game. Scaffolded feedback. Task repetition allows for the incorporation of feedback. That's the same by games, because again, failing and retrying is the natural flow. I don't know if you ever beat a game without failing once. I was never able to do it. If you did, please let me know if that was fun or not. I don't think so. These points about games, I think they're well summarized by G, that states that the players in games practice a new skill set to an automatic level of mastery, only to see it to eventually be challenged. And just this phrase hit these 3 points here: goal-oriented, scaffolded learning, and scaffolded feedback. Because you practice again, you fail, then you master it, and then you have to face another challenge. In fact, this is the whole point of levels and bosses. That's what it is. Mastering something in order to have a challenge. Mastering something else and have a challenge that makes you use all the skills you just mastered. Each level exposes the player to new challenges and allows them to get good at solving them. They are then confronted with a boss that makes them use the skills together with a new one they have to learn. This is how games are designed, and this is how TBLT should be designed, according to Sykes, and to me too, for what it's worth. Okay, here I have a point in yellow, which is collaborative use of language, because of course on games we don't talk about language, and because it's something true only for multiplayer, but still. Second point, in tabletop RPGs, the designers are the GM, and that's very true, and I will actually now read my favorite citation from any manuals for game masters, because other than teacher, I am a game master. And this reference is from the Pathfinder RPG Game Master Guide, and as you can see, it says that any GM, any game master can create a deadly encounter that is way too hard. A skilled GM creates a challenging encounter that the players have a chance of defeating, providing a rewarding experience. This resonates to me with the zone of proximal development by Vygotsky, because what the GM is looking for while designing a challenge in that area is that challenge that is not too easy and not too hard, that actually provide a rewarding experience. And that's how we teachers usually design a task. It doesn't have to be too easy. It has to be something that it could be achieved with help, and we put that help while planning the task. If a GM managed to do so, if a teacher managed to do so, then the challenge it could be appropriate whether you are dealing with soldier A2, with knights B1, or with kings C1. So while planning the challenge, in the same way a language teacher pays attention to student skills, language level, and familiarity with the task type, a GM have to pay attention to player skills, to the character's level, and to the player's familiarity with the type of challenge. In doing so, everyone will get an appropriate challenge, and a challenge appropriate for the level. So what we're trying to do here as a GM is to improve the character's level, and what we're trying to do as a language teacher is to improve the language level by challenging it. Now, there are more than 30... it's very rare, it's actually rare to find reports with teacher feelings and how a teacher actually managed to present a class with a game. There are many papers on the effect the games can have on learning and how it affects learning, but reports on classes on what teachers think, what teacher feels, and what teacher have done to a game in order to make it usable in a class, that's something that is very hard to find. But manuals, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder RPGs manuals, they're not hard to find, and in those manuals all the experiences of millions of players are condensed into very clean and easy to understand suggestion, because there are more than 13 million active Dungeons and Dragons players right now, just Dungeons and Dragons. And this data comes from the Roll20, which is the most famous online platform for RPGs, and from the CEO of Wizard of the Coast, which is the brand of Dungeons and Dragons. So all these suggestions, all these millions of experience of millions of people, you can find them in manuals. And these suggestions I tried to reorganize them, which wasn't hard actually, trying to following second language acquisition theories. For example, Vygotsky, that says that good learning occurs when students can complete a task not on their own, but through scaffolding. And Molin, that's the building up of Vygotsky, says that this role of facilitator or mentor that the teachers have to take while teaching with games have to happen while planning the game, planning the activity, and while the activity is taking place. The suggestion on GMs can be Actually, we can find this GM in the same area. So before playing, while designing, and suggestion for when we are actually playing. For example, I'll have to go fast here. We're already at 10 minutes. This comes from the Pathfinder RPG role-playing game. Knowing your players can prove as important as knowing their characters. Many players develop favorite tricks or stunts with their characters' powers, a well-ingrained misconception about what their characters can or cannot do. Knowing these quirks can help you keep the players engaged and challenged and can deflect problems beforehand. Now here I played a little game that I actually enjoy a lot. I switched the words from this sentence. I took away the words players and I put the word students in it. And I took away the words characters and characters' powers and I put language and language ability with it. Let's try to read it again with this little change. Knowing your students can prove as important as knowing their language ability. Many students develop their favorite tricks and stunts with their language skills, or well-ingrained misconception about what their language can or cannot do. Knowing these quirks can help you keep the students engaged and challenged and can deflect problems beforehand. This is a great suggestion that I hope it helps you in the later when we try to plan a Ludic language pedagogy class together. And this can be found in manuals that are made for fun, not to teach anything professional, but just manuals made for fun. You can find this suggestion, and there are more. For example, you, the GM, might consider running a game just for beginners. Such a games allow all the new players to start at the same point with about the same base of knowledge. This is a great suggestion that actually I did not receive by the manuals. I received from Dr. York when I tried the game is framework in my classes, when he told me to just play in their native language first, in the student native language first. That works as a beginner game. And it's very important because everyone is at the same level if you do something like that. And again, this suggestion comes from the Pathfinder RPG Game Mastery Guide. So something just made for fun, but it's a great suggestion for professionals as ourselves. Let's move to scaffolding in-game. This is my favorite scaffolding example ever, about anything. Because I'll just read it. You might have the player explore a frozen tundra early on, then later travel to an icy plain filled with more difficult challenges that can be overcome using knowledge they previously developed. That's what scaffolding is. Giving a challenge that gives experience and knowledge to the students or to the player, and then giving another challenge where they have to learn more, but the more that they learn, the new thing that they learn is directly connected with something they learned before. Again, Pathfinder 2nd Edition Game Master Guide, one of the most recent manual. And this is the last citation, and then I'll let you go. When players don't know what they're supposed to do in a given encounter, anticipation and excitement can quickly turn to boredom and frustration, and a transparent objective alleviates the risk of players losing interest. Again, here, if we change the word player and we put students, you have a great suggestion for task making, especially when it comes to teaching with games. This is the suggestion. This suggestion basically is telling you to, if the task that the game offers to the students is too difficult, you can scaffold to it with smaller tasks. And that's something that if you know the game, you can do with any game. If you know the game, and I should have mentioned it earlier, because knowing the game is one of the main points I want to make here. If you know the game, if you know the players or the students, then you can do it. You can adapt the game. Like a GM adapt its game to this player, you can adapt a game to your students. Conclusions, and then I'm done. Apart the absence of formal education environment, it will not be an exaggeration to state that the job of a GM in tabletop RPG is similar to the one of a teacher. And I hope you agree with me after this little presentation. And teacher could aim, while planning a task-based LLP activity, on having more power over a game. Scaffolding, adding in-game tasks to facilitate the experience for the students, because that's what GM do. They facilitate the experience for the players. They make it appropriate for them. They find the zone of proximal development where they have to try hard, but they can do it. And they can do so, GMs can do so, because they know the game, they have total power over the game. And what I suggest teachers should do, they should find a way to have power over the game. How to do so? The first suggestion that I have is to know the game. You cannot teach. I don't think you can teach with a game you don't know. And I am actually working on a framework based on this parallelism, and I'm trying to give teacher advice as in how to behave and how to use a game as a GM does. and it's still a work in progress. But if you have any question, if you like the idea, or if you would like to know more about it, please email me at fabio.spanox@gmail.com. That's all for my intervention. Again, I'm sorry I cannot be there, and I hope we'll see you in some other occasion.